Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1257A, and today's date is April 18th, 2017, and the title of the episode is the Fed actually paying the banks not to lend? Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we can see the market is absolutely crazy. One day it's up 100 and something points, and then it's down 100 something points, and it looks like the market's really not going anywhere. It's completely fluctuating. But what we do see happening is that the central bank, the deep state, the establishment, they're getting a little nervous. Because when gold starts to rise, what do? When it reaches a certain point, they slam it down. And someone decided this morning this was a great time to dump over 22,000 gold futures contracts, which is almost about 3 billion notional, and it brought gold down. It was a quick plunge. Now, of course, is this going to last? No, because as we've seen in the past, once the gold was slammed down, gold starts moving up again. Now, this is a signal that we need to be looking at. This is an indicator that tells us, well, things are rapidly changing. Now, every time they slam gold down and it pops back up, we need to see how much it goes up, because I'm not talking about $5 or $10 or anything like that. That's meaningless. When they slam gold down and they bring it down maybe $20 and gold moves up 50 or 100 and they try to slam it down again by another $25 and it goes up another 100, this is an indicator that things are starting to change rapidly. And this is what you need to look at as we move forward, because this will give you some idea what is going on. Now, if you see gold move up $10 from when it was slammed down, not really that much of a change. You will know right off the bat when things start to change, because they will slam it down, and every time they try to slam it down, it will not work, because every time they slam it down 20, it goes up 100 or 50 or 150. And the bigger and the larger increase of gold, you're going to realize that, well, things are starting to rapidly fall apart. And in the economy right now, we are seeing things rapidly falling apart. Now, remember back a couple of reports ago, I told you the corporate media, they're going to start giving us some indication of when this collapse is going to occur. They're going to start admitting that there's problems in the economy. And we're already seeing from corporate media that they're talking about the American retailer and how they're closing thousands of stores and how they're going bankrupt at a rate not seen since the recession. Now, that's very interesting, because just a couple of months ago, even a year ago, they were saying that this all had to do with the weather or online sales. Now they're saying thousands of workers, they're losing their jobs in a slow rolling crisis. And this is devastating the U.S. economy. They've already started to let you know that things are rapidly changing. Remember, they need to show you that it's falling apart. They can't just do this over, one day or 2 days. They need to show this as time moves forward, because they will be able to blame this on Trump. Because who else are you going to blame? Obama? He handed off a healthy economy to Trump. So they're not going to go and say, oh, look what Obama did. He handed off an economy that was not functional. No, but we know it wasn't functional because we've been following it all along. Now, Mark Cohen from Business Insider, he is the director of retail studies at Columbia Business School. And he's saying that the people that work in retail stores will lose their jobs, then spend less money in retail stores because they no longer are employed. This creates a cascade of economic challenges. Really, haven't we been saying this all along? Yes, we have. But what's happening right now is that they're already starting the propaganda that is just happening now. This has been happening all along. They're getting prepared for when this economy comes down. That's what they're doing right now. We see the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry has suffered the worst collapse since 2009. Now, we talked about this before. And now they're out there and they're saying, yes, traffic is drying up in restaurants. And it's going to get worse as time goes on. So they're already preparing all of this, because we've been following the economy. We know that the real hard economic data, it doesn't fit. Just like back prior to 2008, the subprime securities, where the individuals looked at the subprime securities and said, whoa, wait a minute. There's something wrong here. Most of these loans are in default, and these are rated AAA. There's something wrong here. This is what we've been doing. So it's not a surprise. And for you savvy investors, you will know how to make money off of this as the economy crashes. Because remember, you can make money going when the economy is doing well, and you can make money as it comes down. Those people are holding gold, silver, land. Most likely, you'll be safe. Now, this is my opinion. I own gold and silver. I don't own land. This is my insurance policy when things go south. I also keep cash on hand because in the beginning phases, you're going to need the cash to work with certain individuals. Now, remember, we're most likely going to see inflation. So the value of the currency is going to decrease, and you're going to need a lot more dollars to pay for those goods, until eventually what will happen is you'll no longer use the paper currency because people will say it's not even worth it. We saw this in many other countries, and people were bringing wheelbarrows of cash to try to purchase the goods. Other people were using the cash to heat their homes. But what's very interesting about this, and we've been talking about the pension problem, and this is going to be a huge problem. Now, a recent study from the Pensions and Investment Group points out that the top 100 corporate pensions were underfunded by $250 billion at the end of 2016. Now, what's very interesting about this is despite the 250% S&P rally from 2009 lows to the present time, corporate pensions have only managed to improve their funded status from 79.1% in 2008 to 84.5% today. I mean, that is nothing. And basically, the corporate pension funding levels are roughly the same as they were in 2008. Now, the bottom 10 corporate pension funds alone, as ranked by funded percentage, were underfunded by nearly $70 billion. So this is going to be a major problem moving forward. And it's the corporate pensions, it's the state pensions, it's the federal pensions. They're in trouble. And just like the subprime security, where those were in trouble, but no one really knew about it until the disaster hit, the same thing's going to happen with pensions. No one's going to realize it until the very end. Now, it looks like the real estate market, well, it's deteriorating very, very quickly. Now, in other years, 2016, 2015, 2014, during the spring and summer months, real estate was supposed to pop because, it's the warmer weather, the flowers are blooming, everyone feels good, people want to get into their new homes in the warmer weather right before school starts so they can make sure their kids go to the proper schools and they're already in their house. Now, this spring, this summer, most likely we're not going to see any pop just like we didn't see it last year. Right now, we're already seeing that housing starts, they have dropped by 6.8% month on month. This is the lowest since November of 2016. And this is the beginning of spring. Now, the biggest driver was a 16% plunge in the West and Midwest, 35% plunge in the Midwest for single-family starts. And we can see right now that starts decline in both single and multifamily units. So it's hitting everywhere right now, and we know that new construction's down. We know existing home sales are down. We know that mortgage applications are down. We know rates are moving up because we could see already that the Fed already started the process of bringing the economy down. Now, another great indicator is U.S. industrial production, and it has peaked in November of 2014, and it remains down almost 2% from those record highs, despite the stock market surging and all that. Now, this never happened without the U.S. economy being in a recession in history. And here we are today. And if we go back to 2008, 2009, recession. Go back to 2000, 2001, recession. Go back to the early 90s, recession. Go back to the 80s, recession. You go back throughout time, always hit a recession. Now, factory output for March, it has plunged by 0.4%. This is the biggest drop since February of 2015. So when we start to look at all this, we're starting to see that the hard economic data is flashing recession, recession. Now, when I look at it, we've been in a recession. They're just covering it all up. This recession started last year. But again, the Fed, the U.S. government, they'll only tell you when the recession started once we are in the recession, and then they go back in time, just like they did with 2008, 2009. They didn't tell you much later that, yeah, by the way, the recession started back in 2008, in the beginning of 2008, when the Fed was forecasting no recession anytime soon. Now, Citi has this index called the Macro Surprise Index, and it has plunged to 5-month lows with its biggest drop since 2010. Now, the Citigroup Economic Surprise Index, and this is a gauge by Citi and designed to track how well economic data is doing in comparison with economic expectations. And from this, it is showing us that, well, the economy's not doing that well because it has dropped quite hard. The question is, what happens next in the stock market? Because this is not a good sign at all. Now, we know the Fed has been giving banks free money. They've been pumping it into the stock market. They've been told not to lend out. Yes, do they still lend? Yes, they do. But they want to make sure that all that free money is not hitting the public because we would see inflation. So they keep that back. And on October 3rd, 2008, Section 128 of the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008, this allowed the Federal Reserve banks to begin paying interest on excess reserve balances as well as required reserves. The Federal Reserve banks began doing so 3 days later after this was passed. And as interest rates have risen, so has the free money to banks. And basically, the banks have received at 1% $22 billion in free money every year, and nearly all of it goes to the largest banks. So the question is, are they paying the banks every single year not to lend? Because it looks like the banks have incentive not to lend and simply collect interest on the money. So we know that the Federal Reserve bought up the toxic real estate. We know the banks were instructed to not foreclose on homes, let people live in there, to make sure that the prices rise in homes, because the more you keep off the market, it creates a bubble. And then you have foreign investors, you have investment houses, hedge funds come in and purchase thousands upon thousands of homes. If you rent them, fine. Hold on to them. Do not sell. This creates bubbles in the market. And we can see right now that it looks like they were instructed not to lend out money. They received $22 billion each year, and they just held on to it, got the interest on it. They received $22 billion the next year, and they did the same thing over and over and over. Now, the IMF came out with their global GDP outlook, and every time they come out with these numbers, cut them in half, because they're never right. Right now, they're saying that the U.S. is going to grow by 2.3% in 2017. Well, the Atlanta Fed already estimated the GDP for the first quarter around, what, 0.5, 0.6%? It's way off. 2018, they're saying it's going to be around 2.5%. And we know right now they are doing, prior years to this, I should say, the IMF came out with numbers like 3.5%, 3.8%. These numbers are ridiculous. They've never hit the target. But they're trying to convince us that everything is fine around the world, because they're saying global trade is estimated to have grown by 2.2% in 2016 in volume terms, the lowest pace since 2009, below the 2.4 growth rate of world GDP at market exchange rates. So whatever they're telling us right now is that these numbers, they cannot be hit. Yes, if they manipulate them, of course they can be hit. But it looks like the manipulation is getting harder and harder to do. What they're doing right now is they're trying to convince everyone that everything is fine. And we can see from what has been going on around the world, everything is not fine. This is why we see chaos. This is why we see a push in the Middle East. This is why we see the deep state, the central banks pushing this. This is why we see the Fed raising the interest rates just like they did back in 2006, 7, leading into 2008, and then they started lowering them. They're doing the same exact thing. Because again, what did Trump say? Low interest rate, they are a disaster. So the Fed started to raise the interest rates. Trump said, whoa, raising the interest rates, that's going to be a disaster. He turned the tables on them. And we can see right now, the Fed would like to control the collapse of the economy. It's much better for them to control it than have a black swan come out of nowhere. Because this way, they can create the collapse and blame it on who they want. This is what they're trying to do. And we can see that Trump now, he's maneuvering and playing the game because they know the economy cannot last. And they're pushing for a collapse. Yes, they're telling everyone that they're doing it for the people, that they don't cause the collapses. They didn't cause the collapse in 1929. They haven't caused the recessions in all the years afterwards. Of course they have. They are in full control of the system. Think about it. If they just cut the stimulus off right now and they stop everything, what happens to the economy? It collapses. But they can't do that because it's too noticeable. So they have to use other methods to make you think that it happened in another way. But we know, because we've been following them, we know what is about to happen. This is why everyone needs to be ready for what is about to happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.